Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. In today's video, we're going to briefly analyze the main attacking tactical theme that played a decisive role in Arsenal's 3-1 win over Antonio Conte's Spurs. So in today's video, first we're going to focus on Conte's 5-4-1, then we'll briefly look at Arsenal's attacking structure, and lastly we'll focus on the wide rotations that caused Spurs several issues defensively. So when we break it all down and we do look at the board, Arsenal were unchanged in terms of their shape, but what we ended up seeing was that Odegaard, Thomas Partey, and Zinchenko did return to the starting lineup. Spurs played in their normal 3-4-2-1 with Richarlison and Son just in behind Kane, and outside of the pressing, what we ended up seeing was that they dropped off into more of a 5-4-1 out of possession. At times they were very deep in their own half, and from there what you end up seeing is that they ensure that that midfield bank is very narrow and compact, and then they're able to stretch their back line out in towards 5, with Emerson and Perisic looking to close down the wide players. When you look at that overall shape, you have Kane dropping off on Thomas Partey, then you could have Højbjerg and Bentancur looking to deal with Xhaka and Odegaard, and if the fullbacks look to push forward, Richarlison and Son can shoot out to them, or they could opt to tuck in narrow to help keep that midfield zone compact. There have been times this season where we've witnessed Arsenal push their shuttlers into more advanced positions, specifically Granit Xhaka, but even in those situations, Spurs would be comfortable because they have 3v1 against Gabriel Jesus, so Romero could step out towards Xhaka, and if Odegaard looked to push forward in towards that advanced area, Longley could step towards him as well, and then that would now put onus on Højbjerg and Bentancur to protect the back 5 in those central areas, with Richarlison and Son looking to tuck in narrow. Given Spurs' counter-attacking threats, they're capable of dropping off deeper and ensuring that they protect that center of the pitch, so that leaves the wide areas as an option for teams to target, and in spurts throughout this season, we've seen Spurs at their weakest when teams have looked to target Emerson and Perisic, or whichever one of the wingbacks Conte looks to field.
It was evident in the early stages that Arteta wanted to get his wide players into 1v1s with the Spurs wingbacks, and as you could see, Ramsdale was consistently looking to punt balls into the path of Martinelli and Saka to get beyond Perisic and Emerson, or simply take them on 1v1 down the touchline.
Whereas Spurs do shift to a 3-2-5 in possession, and Emerson and Perisic serve as a creative and a goal threat in the final third. From the defensive aspect, when you look at how Arsenal look to play with their shuttlers and their fullbacks narrow, this presented a great opportunity for Martinelli and Saka to consistently harm Spurs' wingback. It was very rare that Arsenal played in a 4-1-5, and they often shift between a 3-2-5 and a 2-3-5. When they shift to more of a 3-2-5, that's where Zinchenko shifts into that midfield zone in the halfway circle, and that's where Xhaka looks to push a bit higher while Martinelli and Saka do hug the touchline. Gabriel and White can now push forward with the ball, but now you have to have a player stepping towards Zinchenko. The issue that they had here was that although Richarlison at times would push towards Zinchenko, Xhaka was caught too advanced high up the pitch, so now Højbjerg could shift laterally to protect Emerson and make it a 1v2. Odegaard's positioning does vary, and he doesn't always look to push towards the center back. At times he looks to shift towards the touchline, and that forces Saka into a narrow position, or he could look to receive the ball on the outside of Son. However, Odegaard did look to push forward beyond the midfield duo, and when White looked to push forward with the ball, Son would close him down, and that would allow one of the midfielders to shift over to provide cover for Perisic, or at times Son was simply dropping off deeper to make it a 1v2 as well. In these situations, Conte has done a very good job of protecting Emerson and Perisic by having Richarlison or Son drop off deeper to make it a 1v2, or simply having one of the shuttlers shifting laterally to protect them as well. At times you would see Martinelli and Saka in a 1v2 or a 1v3, and that necessarily isn't a bad thing if they are smart with how they use the ball in those areas. There were occasions where we witnessed Martinelli and Saka looking to either break down the touchline or looking to cut into central areas where they were closed down, and from those positions they did lose possession, and ultimately that was down to Arsenal's attacking structure when they were in possession. We did see them shift into this shape as move into a 2-3-5 with Zinchenko and White narrow within close proximity of Thomas Partey, so he has less ground to cover in that central area in transition. Now obviously if Xhaka and Odegaard do push higher, that allows Højbjerg and Bentancur to shift over to provide cover for the wingbacks, and that's why their positioning was integral here. They didn't have to initially occupy the two center backs. They could have dropped off the shoulder of Højbjerg and Bentancur to ensure that they had to hold their position, and that would allow the ball to be shifted out towards Martinelli and Saka freely, and from there those two could run at the wingbacks, and then Xhaka and Odegaard can make their forward movement to now occupy the center back, and it would allow the wide players enough time to run at the wing wing-back without the Spurs midfielders shifting across to provide cover. This was a subtle tactical adjustment from Mikel Arteta that should have been witnessed on a consistent basis, and to no surprise it played a key role in Arsenal creating their opener.
In the build-up to Arsenal's opener, it's Saka in a 1v1 against Perisic and focus on Odegaard's movement beyond Højbjerg. As Saka carries the ball towards the byline slowly, you could see Odegaard now dragging Longley and Dyer towards the penalty area, and from there Saka could cut back onto his left foot, and he creates a gap to play the ball back to White because he takes 2 with him and Odegaard takes 3. Saka drops the ball back into the path of White, and Højbjerg does anticipate it late so he doesn't step, and from there White could check his shoulder and look to square the ball to an unmarked Thomas Partey. And from there, because Odegaard, Saka, and Xhaka dragged markers toward the penalty area, Thomas Partey could take a first-time side foot effort to curl the ball beyond Lloris into the top corner. In a rare situation from the center of the pitch, it's Thomas Partey playing the ball around Kane to bypass Bentancur and Højbjerg, and look who's beyond them. It's Xhaka and Odegaard combining from a deeper position, and Xhaka lays the ball off into the path of Odegaard, who now controls it beyond Højbjerg, and from here he could get the ball around Bentancur in tight space, and now he's capable of dragging the ball laterally to shift it towards Gabriel Jesus in the left channel. And from there, Arsenal could progress their play in the intended 1v1 that they want.
However, what we ended up seeing from Arsenal down the right and left touchline was that there were several situations where Martinelli and Saka got themselves into 1v2 situations, and this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. You look to drag Son or Richarlison towards the ball, and then you have a spare man in Xhaka, Zinchenko, Thomas Partey, Odegaard, or White looking to receive the pullback. What ends up happening here is that when you drop off the ball in towards that zone, if they look to take a first-time effort on goal, they'll often have that opportunity to do so. But it's when they look to take a first or second touch, it allows Højbjerg and Bentancur to step forward to block off a shooting angle and force them backwards. However, the other issue that Spurs encountered was that when Martinelli and Saka dropped off the ball towards their fullbacks or one of the members of their midfield trio, if they look to switch the ball to the opposite flank, from there Arsenal were able to get the ball in towards the box or create an avenue to play the ball in towards a danger area at the back post to target the other wingback. We witnessed this on a few occasions.
In this example, you witnessed Zinchenko receiving the ball from Martinelli and squaring it into the path of Thomas Partey, and that's where you see the 2-3-5 being effective. Partey drags Højbjerg and Bentancur towards him, and he squares the ball in towards the path of White, who can now circulate the ball towards the right channel. From there, White slides the ball across Son and Perisic into the path of Saka, and when Saka receives the ball, now he creates a 1v2 with Son shifting over, and he drops the ball back into the path of White, and from here, White has enough space and time to look up, see his options towards the far post, and that's where you end up seeing Martinelli free with Emerson checking his shoulder. White looks to clip the ball in towards the back post. You have Xhaka and Jesus occupying Emerson and Romero, and when he clips the ball in towards that zone, Martinelli is making a run towards the back post off Emerson, but Xhaka can only knob the ball down in towards the path of Jesus, but he nods the ball down into the path of Romero, who clears his lines. Initially, it's Gabriel Jesus down the left-hand side, dragging Son and Richarlison towards him, and he could drop the ball off to Martinelli or Zinchenko. He ends up dropping off the ball in towards the path of Martinelli, and from here, Martinelli now has time and space to square the ball into the path of Zinchenko, but rather than doing that, he looks to slide it across the center of the pitch for Odegaard in that area. Odegaard ends up dragging Højbjerg towards him, and Odegaard ends up sliding it instantly into the path of Saka to create a 1v1 with Perisic. From there, this is one of the rare times you see White making an overlapping run in that opening half, and as White looks to make the run in towards right half space, Saka drags 3 players towards him, and now he can cut the ball back into the path of Odegaard at the edge of the box, and when Odegaard does receive that ball, he ends up taking a touch with his left foot, giving Højbjerg a split second to step towards him, and Odegaard has to rush the shot now, and he fires a low effort at Lloris.
And outside of that, if Arsenal weren't getting the ball beyond the Spurs midfielders to then shift the ball in towards the left or the right touchline, the other key aspect towards their success was Gabriel Jesus shifting out towards the left touchline, as he served as an improved threat against Emerson in 1v1s in comparison to Martinelli. In terms of the second half, the key trait for Arsenal was down that right-hand side, where now Odegaard was receiving the ball on the outside of Son, or receiving it just ahead of Longley, and he was looking to slide the ball towards Saka to get him into 1v1s against Perisic. But from there, White was consistently looking to make forward overlapping runs beyond Saka to get into advanced areas, and from there it was either creating an avenue for Saka to cut across Perisic and Son to get a shot on goal, or looking to play in White, who was then capable of playing balls in towards the penalty area. And in the early stages of that second half, you witnessed Son caught out in narrow central positions, and White was taking advantage of the space down that right-hand side, consistently making overlapping runs, and that resulted in Arsenal's best chances that killed off the game.
And in the build-up to Arsenal's winner, it's Thomas Partey sliding the ball across Son and that midfield bank for Saka. From here, Saka's now in a 1v1 with Perisic, and Longley can't step because of Odegaard, and no one's tracking the movement of White. Saka runs at Perisic, and White makes the overlapping run beyond Perisic and Son. And from here, Saka can play the ball back to Thomas Partey, but he uses the overlapping run to cut on towards his left foot. He can play the ball into the path of Martinelli unmarked at the back post because Xhaka's occupying Emerson, but he ends up firing a low effort on goal that Lloris spills off Romero, and Romero plays it back in towards Lloris, and it falls into the path of Jesus, and from here he's able to fire a low effort in from point blank range. Minutes later, it's Odegaard ahead of Longley, looking to slide the ball into the path of Saka and focus on Son's positioning as White looks to push forward. Odegaard eventually plays the ball into the path of Saka, but no one's tracking the run of White on the overlap. When Saka receives the ball, you could see Odegaard looking to hold his position to cover for White to maintain that 2-3-5. Son ends up sticking with him, and from there Saka could slide the ball across Perisic for White, and from here he locates Xhaka making a run in between Romero and Dyer, and he clips the ball over Emerson into the path of Gabriel Jesus, and from this position from point blank range, Gabriel Jesus nods a low effort downwards wide of the net.
So as you could see, Arsenal's wide rotations and decision making in the final third were far from perfect, but the intent to target and exploit the defensive deficiency of Spurs' wingbacks proved successful in regards to consistently harming Conte's backline.